Hi there, everyone. I'm Dyan Lee. I am ISI's Marketing and Communications Director. Want to welcome you to our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm actually going to be the moderator today, and Melissa Peneycad, ISI's Managing Director, is going to be the host. But before we pass it on over to Melissa, I want to remind everybody that they can go ahead and comment and post comments. They can ask questions. Please feel free to tell us where you're from, all that good stuff, because I'm going to be interacting with you today. And so are some of our guests. But with that said, I am going to pass it on over to Melissa so she can take it away. Melissa?
Awesome. Thanks, Dyan. I love these Sustain It or Explain It podcasts. Such a cool format to share some of the awesome things that ISI is doing. So thanks for setting this up for us today. And yes, I'm going to be the host, and I'm joined by Dr. Greg Zilberbrant, Circular Economy and Climate Change Program Lead at McMaster University. And we've also got Peter Calcetas joining us today. So he is the VP Construction and Chief Technology Officer at HKC Contracting. And on this particular podcast, he is going to be representing the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering in his capacity as VP Ontario Region. Love your double banner background there, Peter.
Thanks, Melissa.
So just for a little bit of background and context in terms of what we're going to be discussing today, we're going to be talking about an exciting new collaboration between ISI, the W. Booth School of Engineering Practice and Technology at McMaster University, and the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering on a training initiative that delivers 2 sustainability credentials, one from McMaster and one from ISI. So Greg and Peter, you're really the stars of this podcast. And Greg, my first question is going to you. So as the program lead for this initiative, could you tell folks who are chiming in a little bit more about what specifically we're talking about? What is this course and when it's being offered?
Absolutely. Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Dyan, for having me. And Peter, always a pleasure to see you and chat about this. So it's an interesting program because it's really geared towards professionals in the field, or those who are upcoming professionals, very much focused on understanding their limitations of time and resources in order to take additional training, but the need to move forward in that direction, the need to obtain new skills and to be successful in their careers and advance themselves. So the training's taking place. It's quite interesting, something that we started a few years ago with these professional certificates of completion, really talking to industry, really talking to folks in the field to understand what are the skill sets that they need and how we can best deliver that from an academic standpoint and really ground it in foundational knowledge, but also provide tools and resources so they can go back to their jobs and really create meaningful change. So this is happening over a period of 3 days. We're very excited that it's part of this collaboration with CSCE. From a national standpoint, but really with Peter's leadership in the Ontario region, and obviously McMaster University is located in Hamilton in Ontario, and with ISI, because I think it's important for us to bring in international standards and bring in frameworks that our students can then take away and use. And of course, ISI is an absolutely great way for them to be able to apply that sustainability. So it's a 3-day course. It happens in November and in January. I'm not going to say the dates here live because I'm likely going to get them wrong, but is in the second week of November, I believe, and in the second week of January as well. We do have registration open, and I can pop that up on the screen for those who want to get a little more detail about the courses themselves, the dates, and the process. So over 3 days, offered twice, once in November, once in January, with great collaboration with ISI and, of course, the CSCE.
So Greg, I'm just going to jump in. So can you tell folks what's the name of the course? Why should they be excited to do this? Like what?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's so I skipped over the name. So Sustainable Infrastructure Design and Engineering. So the focus of this is a of course, foundational knowledge that comes with sustainable infrastructure itself, and the integration of elements of ISI in the training. So we've actually integrated both leading practices, as we would in any academic environment, leading practices, case studies, tools, and resources, but we've married that with the ISI training. And to your point, Melissa, that you started with, which is the ability to earn a credential both from McMaster and from ISI. So we've married the two in order to deliver this. So it's really focused on engineers, designers, architects, but it's really a broad range of professionals who are trying to working in this field and implementing sustainable infrastructure.
Awesome. So I love this. So this is a course on sustainable infrastructure, and students are going to get the benefit of McMaster teaching and a McMaster credential, and woven into the course is going to be training on Envision. So Peter, I want to bring you into the conversation, and I want to ask you a little bit about how, what was the role of CSCE in making this happen? How, from your perspective, did this collaboration come about?
Well, thank you, Melissa. The CSCE is Canada's longest running learned society, and we're always looking at ways where you can move the needle for making civil engineering accessible to all Canadians, promoting sustainable development, and really making a multi-generational appreciation for the services that civil engineering and all the different specialties offer. So when earlier this year, actually, we were looking at ways that we can make that more accessible to the greater Canadian population. And there was a fund created by the Canadian and Ontario governments to get people back to work because of the pandemic. So this fund, there was a call for not-for-profits and for-profit organizations to develop some sort of training which would help, increase the skill set of all Canadians. So being a civil engineer and being in as a professional engineer, a designer, and also being in general contracting and design building, we looked at the construction industry, which in Ontario employs over 500,000 people. And if we could have people become more gainfully employed and also those that are not employed because of the pandemic or for other reasons, get them employed, this would be a help. So looking at other partners, so CSCE applied for this, and we wanted good partnerships. So early on, working with Dr. Zilberbrant, who I've known previously, we worked together. We applied for the funding, and happy news, we got the funding. So full steam ahead since we received the funding from the Ontario government, Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development. And we've been pedal to the metal, trying to move the needle to make skills more available to a greater percentage of the Canadian population. Ultimate benefit is really moving the needle for all of us, where we can create sustainable infrastructure for future generations while stimulating the Canadian economy.
Okay, that's awesome, Peter. Really inspiring. And I want to pick up on a couple of things that you were talking about. So you were talking about getting this funding, collaborating again with McMaster to deliver the programming. So Greg, going back to you, could you explain, who is this course specifically geared towards? And because of this funding, is that enabling for example, like a greater group of people to access training? Maybe if you could talk a little bit about the specifics there, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. I'd be happy to. So, I think that one of the important things that Peter mentioned is, it's the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering, not the Canadian Society of Civil Engineers. So, it's very much about inclusiveness, and it's about getting people involved in moving the needle on sustainability, and specifically sustainable infrastructure, which impacts all of us. So, one of the things that we wanted to do is to make sure that this is not an exclusive opportunity when it comes to backgrounds, educations, because those of us who work in this field or have worked in this field for many years understand that it requires a multitude of disciplines to actually make this work properly. Right, and not have it siloed. So it's really open to anyone who is passionate about this topic. Of course, there are some criteria in terms of sort of basic level of education, so that we're able to have meaningful discussions, and then individuals coming in have the required sort of background that they're able to benefit from that course. But to Peter's point, again, whether those are individuals currently working as professionals or looking to work in this field. So that could be engineers, architects, it could be designers, it could be planners, whether you're a social scientist or an engineer, those skills are all needed when we talk about sustainable infrastructure, because it's not just the building materials that we choose, it's about the communities that we interact with, it's the cultures that we impact. So all of that is critically important from a sustainable standpoint. So to your second question about, we have this great opportunity with the funds or with the funding opportunity from the government of Ontario. So we are able to offer subsidies for individuals in Ontario. Of course, it's coming from Ontario, so it applies to individuals in Ontario. This is not to exclude others, but as you can appreciate, in terms of the subsidies, those apply to individuals who are in Ontario right now. So we do, I can again pop up some links in this chat here, or I can answer some questions about the fee schedules and how those subsidies apply specifically for this inaugural year that we're launching this program, thanks to that funding coming from the government of Ontario.
No, that's great. And so for people who are interested in this program, again, kind of the whole world has turned upside down because of COVID. I know that the intention was to offer this in person. Is it still in person in November? Are you contemplating a virtual or some kind of hybrid scenario? So
great question. My crystal ball has been broken for at least 18 months, if it ever worked before. So we want to ensure accessibility for everybody, and we understand that what restrictions we're dealing with in our jurisdiction might not be the same for somebody outside of our jurisdiction. So we are gonna do it in a live virtual environment. So it's not going to be pre-recorded sessions that you watch on your own time. It's going to be interaction with great guest speakers and lecturers, opportunity to interact with classmates and network, but it will be in an online environment from the comfort and safety of wherever you are.
Great. That's great. Peter, I promise I'm going to bring you into the conversation really, really quickly. I just want to ask Greg one more question before I do. Can you definitely Envision training is being offered as part of this course, which is super exciting. I'm personally pumped to be the Envision trainer. But Greg, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about this course and hit some of the highlights. What are the key lessons or takeaways that you're hoping attendees are going to get out of this?
Absolutely. So I think the Envision piece and understanding how that framework fits into sustainable infrastructure is going to be a critical piece. And I'm excited, Melissa, that we'll be working on this together and presenting that information. But we're really looking forward to help empower these professionals. So the topics that we'll cover, obviously elements of climate change and how that factors in both from a mitigation and an adaptation standpoint, because adaptation is of critical importance. We are living in a world with a changing climate. So yes, we need to mitigate, but we also need to adapt, and infrastructure is a critical piece of that adaptation. Concepts around circular economy, of course, that's going to be of critical importance. And then as we get into those topics, things like embodied carbon and embodied materials, resources that are needed for infrastructure. Beyond that, sort of the technical side, of course, there's a stakeholder engagement piece and other elements that sort of tie into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as other technical elements like green engineering that really deal with sort of what's on the ground right now and how do we build concepts that are going to be sustained for a long period of time. Because I think when we talk about infrastructure, we're not talking about a 1 or 2 year cycle. We're talking about 50 plus years. So we really do need to think about the future and accept some of those unfortunate facts of where our environment is going, and how do we adapt to that, and how do we help people adapt to that from an environmental standpoint as well as from a social standpoint.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. And Peter, I'm going to now put you on the hot seat. for a little bit. So Peter, we've gotten to know each other over the past couple years, and it's always fun chatting with you. Your passion for sustainability and Envision really shines. You've been such an advocate for Envision within CSCE and more broadly. So as an Envision sustainability professional, which I know you are, maybe you could talk to why, why did you become an ENVSP? Why has it mattered for you? And why do you see the inclusion of Envision training in this McMaster program? Why do you think that's so important?
I think that when we all speak, right? When the four of us speak, Melissa, you're looking at, like, from ISI, a framework, right? So a sustainability framework called Envision. And Greg, where you speak from, and where I get a lot of value that I don't normally get in my daily life, is really the theory behind how everything integrates on the grand global scheme. So where I'm at, where myself and my colleagues are, where we are with the shovels hitting the ground, and so it's taking all those concepts and theories and frameworks and actually making them real. And so being in working in a general contract as a professional engineer, working as a general contractor and design builder, we have choices that we have to make in the methods and means and how we create these various pieces of infrastructure. And I think that the willingness for me was there, but perhaps not the training and the framework and the concepts in how to make that happen. So involving things like circular economy and the work that Greg, you and your team have been doing, and Melissa, and Dyan, the work that you've been doing for creating this and promoting this framework, it all connects down to who is actually doing it. And I needed, and my colleagues need, this type of framework in order to shortcut the process, make it happen, but not make it cost anymore. So I think that sometimes, like a stereotype, not that I want to perpetuate it, but some of it is real, where when you speak to a general contractor, we're cheap. We want to do it cheap. And so I think that it is possible that we can design value in and it not cost anymore, as long as we're armed with the tools in order to inform ourselves to make the right decisions, to deliver the desired product, but also be very, very sustainable. And so that's where those things connect for me. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I've lived it. I could have done the laundry, what I call doing the laundry, which is wash, rinse, repeat. And we're encouraged to do it because it's a business model where if you do this process and you don't change anything, you will mitigate your risk and you will make your profit and you'll deliver on your promises. So it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more knowledge to and have the framework in order to achieve those things, those three things, plus be sustainable. And I think that's why this is so important. And because I've lived it and I've delivered it, I know it's possible. Mm-hmm. I know it's possible, and we should, because we're all in this together. So I may be building today and I have a delivery for next year for a project, but we're going to have to live with that project for the next 50 to 100 years. Mm-hmm. And some things that are temporary, they magically last for a long time. Like, let's say the Eiffel Tower was meant to be for the World's Fair in Paris and is meant to be for a month. Guess what? It's still there, right? And now it's an icon of Paris, right? So things that we think are temporary, they actually can last longer, and they should. So we're part of that equation. So depending on where you are in that value chain, whether you're in research and analysis, whether you're in creating the frameworks, or whether you have the shovel and you're digging in the ground to make that foundation for that new piece of infrastructure, we're all part of it. And we have to be unified and understand the same thing. And so things like the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure's Envision rating system and guidelines, those help inform people to make the right choices and mitigate the risk, and also come in at budget, which is, if it doesn't come in at budget, it's not going to work.
And Melissa, I'm going to jump off of Peter's comment, if you don't mind. So I think it's really important what Peter's saying about cost, because I think that really comes down to companies like Peter's that are doing a fantastic job, but they're ultimately they're working to get contracts to do work, right? They're looking to clients to get those contracts. So I think that part of that reality is it's cost, but it's also value, right? And what value are you delivering? And I think what part of the education that we need to provide, and to Peter's point, that global vision. Okay, here are the values. Here are the ways that we want to value the world, because maybe we haven't been doing it the right way, right? And in some instances we have, and a lot of instances we haven't. But I think then and I know this from my students. They're a professional class. I want to make sure they leave with this kind of wholeheartedly. But I always think back to my kind of undergraduate classes where after a few weeks, the students' heads are spinning. Like, okay, well, all these problems, how do I solve them?
Mm-hmm.
How do I take action? And I think where we were going and why the inclusion of Envision as part of the course is so important is that people are going to walk away not just with the tools and resources that we provide from the McMaster side, but say, here's a guidebook. Here's a way to evaluate, right? Here's a way to understand value. And yes, you might have some different ways of doing it, and you might have some ideas that none of us think about, right? There's some incredibly creative people out there who are going to say, I'm going to blow this out of the water. I'm going to leave McMaster and ISI and CSCE in the dust, and I'm going to build the most sustainable building that the world has ever seen, or the most sustainable bridge, or any piece of infrastructure. But I think we need to give them a starting point. We need to give them if you will, a foundation to say, okay, I can move the needle forward, because it's really hard to step on the gas and go that fast if you're still in first gear. We have to give them a few more gears to be able to pick up speed.
100%. That's really, really well said. Greg, you have obviously, going through and doing your PhD, you've done a really, really deep dive in a particular topic. And it's true that every single topic that is included in Envision could be its own, dissertation. And so what I think, it can be potentially pretty overwhelming for folks. How do I get started? And that's really, I think, one of the central values of Envision is distilling all of these really complex topics down into action items that can be actioned on real world projects by real people of different backgrounds coming together. So one other quick thing that I wanted to pick up on from something that you had said earlier, Greg, is you're looking for this course to be pretty interactive and accessible to professionals of different backgrounds. You mentioned very briefly, like, there will be some interesting guest speakers as part of this. That's true, right? And some like practice, hands-on opportunities as well. Maybe if you could just talk a little bit about a mix of how the content will be delivered, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that it's, September 2021. And if anyone is not sick of Zoom yet, welcome to Zoom. We've had it around for a while. Staring at a screen for 8 hours can be, quite, energy sucking. So our intention is, of course, there is content that needs to be shared, right? And so the way that I always approach it is, and my view of it is, content is easy, context is hard. So in order to communicate that, we need to provide the content. We need to share that context. A lot of times we have breakout rooms. So what we'll do is we'll have breakout rooms where you're working with peers. We're going to mix you up with groups with different professionals from different industries to try to solve problems. And each scenario, it differs. So if we're talking about something that's very technical, we get into elements of embodied carbon. You might have to break out, maybe not a calculator, but at least a calculator on your computer, just to kind of, do a couple of sanity checks, or a napkin to do some very quick math. I promise we will not get into differential equations, but some quick math to just sort of kind of understand it from a quantitative standpoint. in other times, we're going to be talking more about the leadership side. We're going to be talking about stakeholder engagement. So it's really thinking outside of those technical and quantitative realms and really getting into, the whys, right? And the whys, and leading that to the hows. Then to Peter's point, okay, I know the why. Now, how do I move forward from there? So a lot of group activity, a lot of exercises, a lot of opportunity for Q&A with panelists in order to kind of tease out information. And one of the things that we do is we try to keep our classes at a maximum capacity, right? So we don't exceed 50 students in our classes ever. And the goal of that, and this specific, when we're talking about these types of topics, where there is a lot of interaction and a lot of guest speakers and a lot of different concepts presented over 3 days. So we keep that as a max, and we do that to ensure that you have an opportunity to meet everybody, interact, but also really engage with speakers. So it is a very interactive environment. I cannot talk for an hour straight into a Zoom call, and I'm sure nobody wants to listen to that. So we need to break it up throughout the way, and definitely not 8 hours for 3 days. I can guarantee you that.
Right. That is awesome. Great conversation so far. So I'm just looking at the time, and I'm now thinking, Dyan, I think we've covered the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, the how. So I think we've covered our bases, but I do want to open things up to Peter and Greg, both of you, any sort of final thoughts or anything that you want to share that maybe we haven't explicitly covered. Yes, Peter, go for it.
I would say this, it takes courage to do something different, so my own personal experience, I was in a meeting. We were HKC was a proponent for a design build, and so then we're 2 hours into this conversation with all the stakeholders, and then I said, okay, well, look, enough's enough. I raised my hand and said, listen, we've been talking about scope, timeline, and budget. Fantastic. But we didn't talk about sustainability. I think we need a line item here for a sustainability budget. And then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork, we had the architects starting to speak about it, the arborists, the environmental engineer speaking about it. And it took 2 hours for somebody to say, hey, I think we need to do it. And then later, the architect came up to me and said, I'm so glad you mentioned it, because it's like I keep being the first one to say it. And then the environmental engineer said, no, I'm the first one to say it. So then they're all shy to say it. And they said, we're really surprised that a general contractor would be the first one to say, let's make sustainability a line item, because general contractors are really usually interested in pushing down cost. And then I said, well, for me, it's really about creating value. If you create the value, the money follows. But if you chase the money, what are you going to be? You're always going to be at best third place, because there's the value, then there's the money, then after, there's the people that are chasing the money. So if you create the value right away, the money comes. And then they were just looking at me and shocked. Yeah, I still don't believe it's coming from a general contractor. And I go, yeah. I mean, I would say, let's keep it cheap and cheerful. But I think you can keep it cheap and cheerful and still be sustainable. So it takes leadership, though, to say it. So it takes, I could have got poo-pooed, I could have got dismissed. So it takes that little bit of leadership and a little bit of courage. And then you'll see that there are people that are going to right away jump on board. So what Greg mentioned, it's not just about the data, and it's not just about the modeling. It comes from in here. You have to be committed and say, okay, I'm going to take a leadership role in this, and I'm going to risk a little bit of my credit or my reputation to push this forward. So do a gut check. You really believe? Put it out there.
Great, Peter. And any final words from you, Greg, before we toss it over to Dyan for wrap up?
Okay, so I will be quick. I think that one thing is, for sure, if you're interested in sustainable infrastructure, this is an incredible opportunity to, join one of the leading universities in the world and, leading verifier and verification system and accreditation system to kill two birds with one stone. And I wish we had a better expression. I am environmentally focused. I do not want to kill two birds with one stone, but we'll use that expression for the purpose of this discussion.
Take out two tons of CO2 with one
with one swallow. With one bird. We'll come up with something new.
Yeah, the bird.
The one thing I will say is that for those of the folks who are listening or watching this after the fact, I think that what we need to do is also spread the knowledge that we have as to how to make this happen, right? How to actually make this happen. The course itself is the result of a lot of things that led up to a framework and a structure that made this happen. So I would encourage those folks from around the world to reach out to us, and we're always happy to share, our best practices, our approaches. How do we reach more people? Because Melissa, Peter, you and I, and Dyan, we're four people on this call. We're not going to reach all the folks that we need to reach in the circumstances that we have to create sustainability and accelerate it at an unprecedented pace. So reach out to us if you're thinking about doing what we're doing, not just attending the course. Reach out, let us be, provide some guidance if we can.
Wonderful, Greg. Thank you for those final comments. I totally agree. This has been a great discussion. I always love chatting with you both. It's always lively. So thank you very much. And Dyan, I'm going to toss it over to you because I know that there are some really exciting things coming up that you want to share with folks before we tune out.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. A great discussion, y'all. And I'm sorry that I popped out here and there. I have a contractor working on the house. My dogs were driving me nuts. But I was listening. So good job. And I will say we do have a lot of comments. We have a question, and I'm going to scroll up here. It's about ESG, and I'm going to put it on the screen. You guys were talking about sustainability and the course focus. And I think what they're asking is about prioritizing the ESG and whether the course is, of course, 2-in-1, is doing that, so to speak. And Greg, that's probably a question for you.
Yeah, probably. That's a fair point. That is a question for me. So Kenan, thank you for the question. So, we have 20 hours to cover a lot of topics. And I mentioned, UN SDGs. And even then, we could spend 20 hours or more just, on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So environmental, social, and governance model, of course, that's an important part of leadership decision-making and sort of, where organizations are looking. We don't dig into it that much, really, aside from, sort of the context of what ESG means and what some of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, how they tie back to sustainable infrastructure. And I will use this as a complete plug. So here we go. We do have another leadership course, which is called Leading Transition, that runs in March. And in that course, again, a professional course of a similar structure, we really do get into ESGs, the connection to corporate social responsibility, socially responsible investment, and all those other elements that are critical from a corporate leadership standpoint.
That's great. We have a lot of folks who are telling us where they're from. So I'm just going to put it on the screen for you so you can see where they're tuning in from. Iran, awesome. We have someone here from Baltimore, Maryland with Morgan State University, James Hunter. Let's see, we have somebody from Uzbekistan watching today. Here we go. Hello from Uzbekistan. I think it's Golub is the name of the person. It's showing up on my phone. We have Diana Senor who would like to say hello to you, Melissa. And by the, I'm so sorry. I'll let you. This person also says they want to be the leader in sustainability in the region. And I think that's awesome. So I told them, hey, check out Envision, maybe reach out to Greg and some of their courses. And also we're getting somebody from Canada. That's Diana.
Yes. Hi, Diana.
Yeah, it's nice to see we got some Canadians. We also have Latifa, who is with McMaster. And so several people just saying hello.
Hi,
And,
Latifa.
and there was another question, but we might have to follow up after because we're getting so many, it's hard to put them all on there. Somebody wants to know, they're trying to, it looks like, organize for the Asian event coming up. So they're interested in that. And anyway, there's quite a few people are wanting us to put in a link afterwards. So what we're going to do is we will not only put in McMaster's link to register, but also the fee schedule. We'll put in ISI's website so they can go and review everything about the course as well, and Envision. And so one other thing we're going to do is make sure we post the link to where they can share this video. Mm-hmm. So someone was talking about how we can do this, how we can spread the word. Well, that's it. It comes down to sharing and liking and tuning in next time as well. And real quickly before we go, we have a couple things to plug. We have a virtual conference coming up, 17th and the 18th. You can, if you're an ENVSP, you get if you attend, you get all of your credential maintenance credits, including the day before you get your prescribed courses. And we do have a webinar coming up on the 20th of October. So go to our website, look up those, and see if you're interested in learning about Envision and about the courses from McMaster. So that's it, guys. I want to tell you it was very enjoyable to listen to the conversation. Thank you very much. And for all of our followers who watched as well, thank you, and please share. We will catch you later. And soon as I find the music.
Thank you.